Welcome to another episode of Live from the Blue Seats. I'm your host, Rob, joined as always by Dave and producer JL, John-Luc Shapiro. And for a change here as we record Live from the Blue Seats on a rainy Wednesday night, we have a little bit of news to break, or at least the news didn't break after, 2 hours after the pod was released. The Rangers have traded Kaapo Kakko, a move that many were expecting. It seems like there's widespread disappointment with the return. So we'll have lots to say about that. We have a few questions to answer. And maybe at least thankfully, this gets us away from actually having to talk about these dreadful hockey games that the Rangers have been playing for the last 3 weeks. That might be the one silver lining here. Dave, how are you?
Go ask JL first.
John-Luc Shapiro, how are you?
I'm okay. I'm a little disappointed. My leg hurts, but I mean, it could be worse, honestly.
Yeah, so let's just, for anyone who, by the time you hear this in the morning, now it'll be Thursday morning, you'll know that the Rangers traded Kaapo Kakko to Seattle. This is a very Seattle type player, by the way, so probably makes a lot of sense for Kakko, and I think he'll get good opportunity there. For Will Borgan, an NHL defenseman, no doubt. Not a name. Well, timeout. I'm going to come at this from a little bit more of a positive place than you guys are, and we'll get there. But he's an NHL defenseman. He is going to step right into the lineup and play probably on Friday against Dallas. A 3rd round pick and a 6th round pick. So restocking the cupboard a little bit after 3 straight years of, going for it at the deadline, which obviously means you have to sacrifice all of your draft picks, or most of your draft picks. Consensus here is that Drury did not do a great job. There's also some, I think lingering sentiment out there that the Rangers kind of, even in the very immediate term, have kind of tanked Kakko's value over the last couple of weeks, where they could have put him in the top line and showcased him and not healthy scratched him if they knew where this was going. So, another piece of this whole situation being mismanaged by the GM and coach. At least that's, how a lot of people are looking at this. I don't necessarily disagree, but Dave, if you don't mind, unless you want JL to start, I'll go to you first and your thoughts on the trade.
Oh, all right. So the issue isn't trading Kakko. So after the Steve Dangle pod or recording that they released that we discussed on Tuesday, yesterday, was it Tuesday, Monday? We knew Kakko had made a soft trade request. Not soft tampering, soft trade request. It wasn't a trade me. It was a, hey, I could go for a change of scenery. I know you guys have been trying to move me. Just make it happen. We knew that happened. I had asked around. I had that verified by 2 other people. So I knew it was coming. Trading Kakko isn't the issue. We knew this was coming from the summer. At the very latest, the summer is when we knew a Kakko trade was coming. The issue is the return. This is a terrible return for a 40-point middle 6 winger who doesn't get power play time. Assuming he gets power play time in Seattle, he's a 55-point player with his strong possession impacts. And you got a 3rd rounder, a 6th rounder, and a crappy defenseman who you're probably going to move at the deadline now because it's very clear the Rangers are tanking this season. That is on par with Pavel Buchnevich value. That is abysmal, and it's not the first time Drury has sold a Russian-born player. Not Russian, a Euro-born player.
Finnish,
2 Russians and a Finn. 2 Russians and a Finn for pennies on the dollar. 3rd time he's done it. 2 of them were top 10 picks.
Well, one of which was Kravtsov, which obviously he was not an NHL player. It didn't work out.
Right. Kravtsov was not an NHL player, but they got, what did they get for him again? A 7th rounder?
Yes, and what's his name?
AHL player.
William Lockwood. Yeah, the immortal William Lockwood. I don't think he ever played a game for the Rangers.
What's with them in trading Euro players for guys named Will?
I disagree with a lot of what you said, Dave, but I want to get JL's take first. Yeah, I do.
Interesting. Okay.
Well, yeah. I mean, not like I'm not. You'll see why.
Yeah. Okay. Fair.
Go ahead, Dave. JL.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, this is essentially a massive failure on both sides of this coin. The return is a little less than expected. Also, anyone listening who thought that they were going to end up, trading Kakko for Jake Gensel is delusional, or just kind of daydreaming. I don't want to say delusional because the person knows what I'm talking about, but it's just unrealistic, so to speak. It's definitely a weak return, but it's not the worst thing in the world, because truth be told, judging off of the comments that he made, his value was already, and whether or not this was the Rangers doing or his doing, but he's had 3 head coaches, and 2 of them probably didn't see his best interest at heart. And one of them actually gave him a lot of opportunity to kind of do something. He didn't do it. So I think this is just one of those things where they needed to get pretty much whatever, because they probably weren't going to get much more for him considering how the team has been playing. They probably weren't going to get much more for him down the line. So it's better you get some futures rather than having had sent him out previously for someone who probably wasn't going to return. Again, it's kind of sad. This is a massive failure on both sides because, Kakko was drafted 2nd overall, and you hate to have to keep throwing out the draft position, but it's going to always be a thing. You can't ever escape that, just like Lias Anderson could never escape it. It's not necessarily their fault, although Kakko was consensus number 2. And you could blame the player. He was given ample opportunity. Let's not say he wasn't outside of the power play, presumably, but he was given ample opportunity. But also the GM, maybe could have done a little more with it. The organization maybe could have nurtured it a little bit more. But I mean, it was just a failure on both sides, and it's kind of a shame. I have a lot of overarching thoughts when it comes to not only the reaction that I've seen, but also the direction that the team has been going in. And I'll just begin, and I'll emphasize later on the silver lining of all this, and then I guess Rob, you can come in, and I'll just end my statement with this. This move should signal hopefully a little bit of a spark, whether it's in the players or in the organization, but also basically kind of say, look, can't be complacent. Things are happening. Either get your act straight or you're gone.
That's what we said about the Trouba trade.
We did. I was going to say, and that's the issue, is that this group of players probably isn't going to respond well to this. Although I will say
that's up to them.
It is up to them. Yeah.
So it's the same sentiment.
Yeah. No, so Dave, the main bone to pick I have with it's two things. One is, I don't think they're punting the season at all. I understand what you're saying about this guy's a UFA. I don't think that necessarily means he'll get traded. But I think this is much more of we're retooling on the fly. And that's where I come back to my sort of ultimate negative feelings about this. It's not even the trade in a vacuum. Look, I think I would encourage people to do a little bit of digging on Will Borgan, who is a guy that I think collectively the 3 of us have probably watched like 30 total minutes of his hockey career. Like, let's be honest here, right? I'm not saying I've scouted him at all. What I will say is, and I saw the chart, by the way, that everyone's posting, and he's like 3rd percentile offense, 4th percentile defense, whatever it is. I also did happen to look at his hockey reference page, which can be interesting, and it's a different take on a different set of numbers. Before this year, which is when his underlying numbers really tanked, he was trending in the right direction, right? He started in Buffalo. He was a part-time player. He got more and more usage in Seattle. Last year, he was up to 17 plus minutes of ice. He was a positive player in terms of Corsi, shot attempts for. He was about a break-even player in terms of expected goals. And that was on a team not coached by Dan Bilesma, right? Or I guess maybe that was, I don't know. I don't know if I can't remember when Biles was brought in. The point is that he's had a rough year, right? So this is two players who might benefit from a change of scenery. The other thing that I know people don't want to hear and they don't want to look at is, but if you scroll to the top of this lovely gentleman's hockey reference page, he's 6'3", 204 pounds. He is a right-handed shot. He is essentially a much cheaper version of Jacob Trouba. But he might actually be suited for a shutdown role. So look, if you want to be somewhat optimistic about this, you can say they see somebody who can grow into a shutdown role at age, he look at that. He turns 28 tomorrow. Tomorrow's his 28th birthday. He's born December 19th, 1996. So again, presumably he'll make his Rangers debut on Friday as a newly minted 28-year-old. Let's see what the kid's got. He looks like he moves pretty well. If you go on YouTube and type in Will Borgan, you know what you get? You get a lot of hits and fights. So not a lot of goals. Fair enough, right? His career high in points is last season. He had 25, 3 goals and 22 assists, which is about what Jacob Trouba was giving you. He had a little bit more because I think he was on a better offensive team and he got, drips and drabs of power play time on the second unit. I don't think this is a complete zero. I think it's an unknown player. I think it's a guy who, was playing second, third pair minutes. But look, I mean, this year, his time on ice is down 2 full minutes. He averaged 17 and a half minutes last year. He's down to 15, 12 this year. So fine, it's not going particularly well for him. But maybe the change of scenery helps. The other thing I'll say is, and this is, like I said, where I have my most sort of negative reaction is that why are we doing this in December? These are all the moves you should have made in June. And you've basically, now they are not like I said, Dave, I don't think they're intentionally punting the season, but they are really basically wasting a year now. And look, that's a lot of that's on the players. They have just played absolutely abysmal hockey for over a month now. And that's mostly on them. But all of these were moves that should have, been made over the summer. We knew after last year that they could not run it back with this core. We knew Kaapo Kakko wasn't a part of their long-term plans. We knew they had to clear salary off the books, and they just should have done it over the summer. And Drury could have kept it in-house, had the hard conversations, and gotten this stuff done in June and July when it should have gotten done. And they could have gone in with a clean slate and a little bit of a fresh look in September. And training camp wouldn't have felt weird the way Larry Brooks has reported. It kind of felt weird, and it's felt off all year. And, it wouldn't have been the drama with Trouba from a few weeks ago. And it wouldn't have been this with Kaapo Kakko coming out and making public comments yesterday. It's just been so mismanaged when they knew they couldn't run it back with this core. So that's what bothers me. The moves in a vacuum, getting rid of the salary of Goodrow, Trouba, and moving on from Kakko, where it just wasn't going to work here, I have no problem with it whatsoever. So that's my take. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts, Dave. Okay. I don't know if you want to retort my retort there.
I do. So first thing, JL, you said something about the draft position. Kakko is a 6-year veteran. At some point, the draft position needs to stop being a factor. And I say that because, and this is something that Luker put out on Blue Sky that I 1,000% agree with and expanded on it. The Rangers had a solid line. I'm not saying they're a top line. I'm saying they were a solid line of Kreider, Zibanejad, Kakko. They had it last year. They were, I think, a 70% shot and expected goal share, something to that effect for a while, but they were not scoring goals. They shot 4% while they were together. That was not going to continue. There is no way Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider were going to shoot 4% in an entire year when they're actually trying. And I'm adding that qualifier at the end because we know how this year's going. When they're trying, they're not going to shoot 4%. If they left well enough alone and just let it ride the way they fucking should have, and sorry, I'm pissed right now, if they left well enough alone, that line would have self-corrected. And they would have had the Zibanejad line, Zibanejad, Kreider, Kakko, at their own Sasha Barkov light line. Barkov on Florida obviously Barkov puts up 70 to 90 points a year. They don't have that player, but they had that role and that line filled of a solid second line or top line, however you want to look at it, however you want to shake it out, that was going to put up points, that was going to control play at even strength, and they were going to do it against the opposition's top competition. And that's what they were doing. And they broke it up for who the fuck knows why. The same way this year they broke up the defense pairs to shoehorn Ryan Lindgren, who couldn't even eat solids yet, back into the lineup and tank their season from that point on. This is a colossal fuck up by Laviolette, by Drury, and by the players for just quitting on us, the fans, at this point. I have no words for how I just put this out. This is keeping up with the Kardashians, except it's the fucking Rangers, and I don't even know what to say anymore. And I do believe they're punting the season, at least this season, because now they have two big trades that they acquired pending unrestricted free agents in Urho Vakanainen and now Will Borgan. We know Ryan Lindgren's gone. We know that's coming. And the way things are going, Riley Smith, who's been fine, is going to be gone too. What are we doing?
Tons of cap space. Well, they're going to have tons of cap space in the offseason, that's for sure. So,
or who? Who?
I don't know. It opens up all sorts of possibilities for trades and free agent signings. And then obviously, as you've pointed out many times, Dave, 2 summers from now is where it gets really interesting if McDavid
2 summers from now, not
Eichel,
next summer.
Right, but
2
they can
summers from now. So what are they doing next year in Laviolette's final year under his contract?
Well, and so here's the point, and then I'll go to you, Jay. But back to kind of just finish what I was saying before. Like my one problem now is that rather than if you had made these moves in the offseason, you would have set your roster up for this season, right? And you would have done so maybe with an eye towards the 26th summer or however you want to look at it, right? And you could have gotten some extensions done.
Yes.
Right. So so these moves still needed to be made. They should have been done over the summer. Now what they're doing, and this is why it bothers me, is like they're almost like chasing the roster now, because it's like, oh, well, we got rid of Trouba, but now we have to fill those minutes. And like the solution for the last 2.5 weeks has been Victor Mancini, which is a joke. The guy is not ready. I like his potential. Seems like a nice kid, can definitely skate. He can't really do anything else, right? Chad Ruedel, they don't like. I think we saw why. He's just not fast enough to play, significant minutes. He's a decent 7th defenseman. I still think if you played him, a lot of games, he'd probably net out fine. But he was, directly responsible for one of the goals against the first goal in the game against Nashville. And so it's like, all right, well, now we're going to use Kakko to get essentially our Trouba replacement, Will Borgan. I think, and he's basically now, to your point, Dave, in an audition for a long-term deal, whether it's with the Rangers or another team. He's a pending unrestricted free agent. Now
he is very fast, by the way. He's a good skater.
Yeah, he's a good skater. So, and he's big. So, and look, I know we're not supposed to rate size, but on the flip side of that, I've watched Zach Jones get pushed off the puck how many times in the defensive zone this year. So size can matter if you know how to use it. And if you're a smart hockey player and you know how to position yourself. I want to see Will Borgan play 10 games as a Ranger before I completely pass judgment on him as a player. I really don't want to do the thing where I look at one chart from this season. Like I said, there's more to it.
That's fair.
Now, what? No, so now you have to replace Kakko, who was
Brett Berard.
Right. So that's what they're thinking, right? And potentially Offman will get a shot this year as well, I would think, when he's healthy.
I mean, I get it. And I'm happy to be wrong on this. Like, if Borgan turns out to be a proper fit on a third pairing role, then great. I'm happy to eat my words. I just don't see it. I don't.
Yeah. JL, any other thoughts from you on the trade or the bigger picture here?
So just in terms of the trade, I've watched a lot of Kraken hockey. The Kraken and Vancouver Canucks I've been watching a lot lately, primarily because I have players on my fantasy team. So thank you ESPN Plus for that.
And you don't go to sleep apparently until like 2 a.m. So you stay up for all these West Coast games. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a vampire. But Will Borgan, I'm in the same boat, Rob. I want to see him play a little more because We've had instances where players have had, uninspired performances elsewhere. A change of scenery comes and they do well. And look, Kakko's probably going to do well in Seattle. He's, like you guys said, he's like the perfect player for that team. But I want to see how he works out here. And then also too, I agree. There's a lot of that I agree with both of you guys on. I don't necessarily think that they're punting the season, because I think Drury knows that if this really gets out of hand more than what it is now, he's fired. So I think you said, Rob, they're chasing the season, but at the same time, there has been a huge mismanagement in the way that they've done it. And look, I can't blame the team, or at least Drury, for trying to keep the guys together and trusting them after the whole Barclay Goodrow thing. I can't fully blame him for that, but with everything going public and with just kind of like trying to now catch up, it's a bit much. And in terms of Kakko himself, you talk about Kreider's advantage at Kakko. I agree. They should have stayed together for, more than what they were. But let's not kid ourselves, though. I mean, they did have a significant portion where they were playing together for extended minutes. This is when, finally they put Lafreniere, Trocheck, and Panarin together, and they kept that together. They were smart enough to keep those guys together because obviously they were scoring. But I think the bigger picture here, at least with that, is that Kakko would have not been able to thrive in an environment when you have guys like Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad not sustaining their end of the bargain. Now, would we have blamed Kakko if Kreider and Zibanejad were underperforming together like they currently are right now? It gets to a point where Kakko wasn't the problem on that line, because they clearly were not producing as much as they should have. You can go and hold the puck and shoot as much as you can, but at the end of the day, the puck has to go into the back of the net. And I'm not yelling at you, Dave. Don't take that the wrong way. But while they could have been put together, they clearly something wasn't happening. And I probably sound like an idiot, just me rambling on right now, but I see why they broke them up in the first place. And actually, Kakko was, I think, me personally, and I don't have any charts to reference or anything like that, so I apologize in advance. But just from looking at the players together, I thought Kakko looked a lot better away from those two, because he wasn't so deferential to them. And he even said that himself, that he felt like he had to kind of give the puck to them. And when you got the Wonder Twins over there basically just skating around, making their money, not doing anything, it kind of puts the kid in a bad spot. So now he has to do a little bit more on one line. He has to do a little bit more on the other line. And then maybe he just wasn't a fit for the system either. Just like Ryan Lindgren's not a fit for the system. And hopefully he's the next one out. I want to see what Will Borgan has. Kreider's advantage, I'd have to get their heads out of their butts. And Kakko's going to do well. We know it already. It's both of what you guys are saying. A lot of this, what you guys are saying, the way I see it is like in the middle of both of what you guys are saying. It should have been done in the season. It's a mismanagement on both sides, and it's basically everybody's at fault. And the return, depending on what happens, should be, hopefully something that can really benefit this team on the back end, especially the Zach Jones sentiment. I saw him get manhandled against the Kings on Saturday in person.
Yeah.
That was fun. But
Yeah,
it's just a frustration all around, and it's and also just obvious replacements, like you said, Berard, Othman. Those guys have a little more upside in terms of just fitting into the system and kind of getting grittier and dirtier, and probably having a little bit more of a scoring touch than Kakko. So it's a mess.
They have plenty of winger depth in their system. They have no center depth. I don't know how they're going to solve that issue. And the defense core now needs to be completely remade. Again, Will Borgan gets his audition. He's going to get 50, 51 games as a Ranger. And if he's part of a turnaround and he looks like he can be brought back at a low number, that's awesome. And it ends up being a win. And maybe we feel very differently about this trade 6 months from now. But yeah, I mean, look, Dave, to your point, he's very easily a one and done or half a season and done guy. I will share the overall sentiment about, I think Kakko probably deserved a longer leash than he got. Now, look, on one hand, yes, this is his 6th season. He did get some extended run with top players. It never really seemed to click. But I'm aligned with Dave, and I've used this comparison a lot, and I know have said it before on the show. Like, definitely see a world where Kakko could have been like Valery Nishushkin, like who had a season, by the way, where he played 50 plus games for Dallas and scored 0 goals. Literally, look at his stats. He had a 0 goal season. And then he went to Colorado and was like an integral part of a Stanley Cup champion, scored plenty, scored, I think, 10 goals in the playoffs. Like the goals come for the good players. They do. On the flip side, last night we watched Kaapo Kakko shoot the puck about 6 feet off target when he had a wide open net. It was their best chance to score. And, Sam and Joe, who, I mean, poor Sam, like, not only is he getting a horrible season to close out his amazing career, but he could not have sounded less interested in a hockey game. Like, that was about as low energy as I've ever heard Sam Rosen, to the point where like multiple people were texting me and being like, is Sam okay? Like,
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
it didn't sound good, but they were both like, oh, what a great block by whoever the Nashville defenseman was. Like, no, Kakko missed the net. He shot from that angle off of the outside of the net. He didn't even hit the post. He didn't hit the defenseman. Like, so that was in many ways a microcosm of his Ranger tenure, right? He's part of a great offensive sequence, keeps the puck alive, gets himself in position to scores, and then completely blows the wide open chance. And that unfortunately will be his legacy here. Whether or not he turns it around in Seattle or elsewhere, because he is also I guess he's a restricted free agent, right? Or is he? Yeah, he's coming up on. Yeah, he's still probably going to come back with Seattle, but we'll see what his next contract and next opportunity looks like. We did get a lot of questions, guys, so I do want to move on to those. I'm sure there will be more Kakko talk kind of weaved into that, but yeah, I don't know, JL, if you want to start with those. We got a lot of interaction, at least that I'm seeing on Blue Sky.
Okay, so let's start off with our friend Tyler at TylerRichard93.bsky.social. And he asks, in what world do the players who were 2 wins away from the Stanley Cup final think that they are absolved from blame for this? They may not like Drury, but it gives them no right to quit on the team, city, or each other. Ask Tampa how they're doing, that their former captain left for nothing in free agency. Then he goes to the follow-up. I don't recall an entire team quitting on management like this. This is in the salary cap era. He said this is very new to him.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone on and on here about the players, and I think we feel pretty strongly here that the players shoulder quite a bit of the blame for all of this. That it's just
majority of the blame.
Majority of the blame, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
It's and I just want to point out, expanding on that, Rob, we are not a group that routinely blames players.
No, we rarely side with the management.
I know.
Quite the contrary, actually.
We're always the group that says what is, like, the coaching staff needs to change, the system needs to change something. We're always saying something is wrong. And if you do a search on the sites for the Rangers have a something problem, it's something about injury management. It's something about systems management, Drury, something. And this is the first time it's been the Rangers players need to suck it up. This is as close to 98 to 2004 as we can get.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, I mean, look, even to the point where the only guy, and actually I tweeted this, I posted it on Blue Sky during the game, the Nashville game. The only guy that really hasn't bothered me at all this year, and I don't include either goalie in this, is Panarin. I think Panarin's attitude's been good. He's obviously produced. I think they dearly miss him, and you can see it now. I mean, and it's going to be a shame, right? He's going to be another Ranger that is an all-time great that goes down with amazing stats and a really great legacy and no Hart trophies, when he like absolutely should have probably won a Hart trophy at some point in this run. Like, imagine where this team is without him from the moment they signed him to now. Do they get to Eastern Conference Finals? Do they win a President's Trophy? No, there's not a chance. Like, the guy is such a generational offensive player that I think is going underappreciated because, he doesn't really have a story. He's not Connor McDavid. He's not McKinnon. The Rangers haven't won a cup. Not his fault. I know he's wilted a bit in the playoffs, but so is the whole team. This is a theme here, by the way, that is now truly coming to roost this season. I have no problem with Artemi Panarin. Even Adam Fox, I'm starting to really kind of get sick of, and / wonder if he's hurt, because he is like,
he's definitely hurt.
He's
Has to be.
70% of what he should be. He's nowhere near Norris level. And like, I don't blame Chris Drury for that. Like, you have a roster. It is built on top end talent that needs to perform at least in the ballpark of their expectations. And outside of Panarin, 0% of this roster is doing that.
So, oh, crap, I forgot what I was going to say.
I was ranting about Panarin and how great he is. I don't know if
Right.
that triggers anything. Yeah.
Yes. So Panarin first. We are at a point, if the Rangers want to salvage this season, and I was joking about this last year. I'm no longer joking about it. They all need to go shave their heads. I'm sick of this crap.
Yes.
It worked for Panarin. Go shave your
it.
heads. I don't care anymore. Mika, donate your hair to Locks for Love or whatever that's called. Do it. Get it over with. All you guys, shave your heads. It's done. Get it over with. You have to do it.
Also, I mean, it's funny. The need to sort of like try and make this fun again and like have some level of bonding and enjoyment coming to the rink. Like, how funny would it be if they just all agreed to shave their heads and they all came in like Bick bald like Panarin was? It'd be hilarious.
I mean, it would be hilarious. And hey, maybe that's a team building activity. Instead of going to Banff, go to Dry Bar or whatever that place is called, that chain of hair places called. Go all shave your heads. Do it.
This is also a revenue opportunity for the Rangers. What a sport clips or super cuts or one of those. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Come on. Anything else? Well, let's go to the next question actually, because we have so many.
Yeah.
Okay. So this next question is from @JessicaLynn312 on Blue Sky. She writes, "How excited are you for Avery to be the next GM? JK, maybe. But seriously, if you had the power to fix this team, what would be the first thing you would do?"
Ooh.
You all heard the Avery thing, right? That Bissonnette said that he was flying to New York to meet with James Dolan. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, that was
yes, that was
dumb.
stupid.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't doubt that it's happening because James Dolan's nuts, but he's not making him the GM. So that,
No.
I think he's interested in Avery's take, though. He probably wants to have I know Dolan's not a drinker, but he probably wanted to have a mocktail with Avery in some shishi place in Chelsea and hear his thoughts.
So, if I had the power to change the Rangers, the first thing I would do is buy the team from Dolan. I'm not kidding. It starts at the top.
Of course. Absolutely.
Buy the team from Dolan. I'm sick of this crap that he pulls too, because I still want to know what Gordon's and JD's plan was. I still want to know what that was. We will never know.
Yeah, he looms. This is the problem with him. Not that I think he really directly gets involved that much, but he looms, right? As soon as things start going bad, you very quickly get to the like, what does James Dolan think of all this? How's he going to react question? Like, it would be nice to have ownership that just doesn't have a history of operating that way. Man. the one for me, honestly, was like, I think you probably have to sell high on one of your, like a Keandre Miller or one of like another core player. That's kind of the next thing. And like, but you got to try and find that impactful trade that really does change the culture, right? Again, like these are moves on the margins that needed to be made and clear up salary, but like Urho Vakanainen and Will Borgan don't move the needle at all. Look, they recalled Matt Rempe. That's the other piece of news that came up now that they have.
That's going to do a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will at least, again, back to like the enjoyment of this, like at least like they had fun when he was around last year. And there was a little bit more of a sense of like, hey, like, there is a little bit of a physical element that wasn't here before. And the team clearly loved him. I mean, they loved having him in the locker room. They think he's a riot. Yeah. He will bring some energy. He has to try and not take horrible penalties. He also needs to play like more than 6 minutes. Laviolette, like truly at this point, what do you have to lose? You're 3-11 in your last 14. Like bite the bullet and play the guy 11 minutes and see what happens. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know what else to say, but anyway.
And the refs need to get off his ass.
100%. Yeah. I think he's
Seriously.
not.
That's the issue that I will always go back to is he cannot be effective while the refs are riding him.
But just to back to Jess's question, I would probably look to trade probably Keandre. I'd also I would not, this is going to sound really nuts, but I wouldn't hesitate, even though he's just signed a deal. But hey, this is kind of like fantasy land. I would see what folks were offering for Lafreniere in a big package. Only because you have Perot and other wingers in the system, and maybe that gets Ottawa's ears perked up and they're all of a sudden interested in moving Kachuk. I don't know.
Well, if it were up to me, I would try and move heaven and earth to listen on what you can maybe get for Vincent Trocheck. Not that I want to move him quickly, but the guy that I really want to move, and I know this is probably piling on, you want a culture shaker, you find a way to trade Mika Zibanejad, right? Now, considering that contract is borderline impossible, you're going to have to take a loss at some point, whether it's trading for a guy who is either of equal value or has a slightly longer contract, or maybe less but a little bit more money, or you have to take on something. It's very similar to what rich teams do in baseball, is if you want to get a guy, you lessen the prospect return by taking on a bad contract. So you find a way to do that with Mika Zibanejad. I don't necessarily think you have to trade Chris Kreider or Artemi Panarin, because as much as Kreider is probably one of the bigger instigators in all this, that's a guy you want to keep here. He does fit in the system. He has proven that he can perform. So you can kind of get away with that a little bit. But Zibanejad really hasn't, whether he's injured or whether it's the system that's the problem. You do that. Lindgren, of course, has to go. I honestly, as much as you don't trust him, Rob, I trust Victor Mancini more on the ice than I do Ryan Lindgren, and that's really not saying much. And then obviously, maybe try to find something for Keandre Miller. Look, I know Keandre Miller still has loads of potential, but it's just game in and game out. There is just this lack of defensive responsibility that comes from him, and obviously other players on this team too. But he's the one that you want to see succeed the most, in the sense that he has the physical tools to not only play big in front of the net, but also have a little bit of an offensive flair to his game. And it just kind of seems like that's not really happening. I mean, he looked a little bit decent last season. Some of the mistakes you can probably mix with Trouba if you really wanted to, but it just kind of seems as if that's another player that could use a change of scenery and potentially, get maybe something in return, because people would pay for that skill set, and maybe he fits in another system. Who knows? But that's just what I would do if I had the power to fix the team, because like I had mentioned in one of my chats, or in a conversation with someone, because I've been chatting with people about this for the last couple of hours, is that there's depth in the system that could supplement stuff coming out, with the exception of maybe center. But that's more than likely going to have to come on the market, unless you draft the guy that's going to be, can't miss prospect.
Yeah, I think that's a couple of years away. I like Dave's idea of shaving all their heads. Let's do that.
That's fun too. No, yeah, by all
Next
means.
question.
All right, this is on Blue Sky. This comes from Daniel Passes. He goes, "What are you looking forward to most in the 25-26 season?" Huh.
What am I looking forward to the most in the 25-26 season? Stability.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with that.
Yeah, I think hopefully we have the semblance of a new core, right? At that point, the dust will really settle on not only these moves, but whatever moves are also made in the upcoming offseason. I believe it is the centennial. It's the 100th season of Ranger hockey. So we're probably getting a cool jersey. I'll say that. That's what I'm looking forward to. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, I'm sticking with stability.
What I want to see is stability and consistency. Yeah. All right. So this next question comes from Surly Sailor on Blue Sky, and they write, this is more of a statement, I guess. So this is probably the best thing to happen to New York NYR. Give Drury no reason to extend Lindgren forces him to rework the defense as much. And I think Drury is a D-bag to players, going back to rumors of Anderson and Kraft. I'm not sure about that. These losses will help pull the weeds from the locker room. So that was a statement from yes, from what's his it's Surly Sailor. Sorry. Yes. And then we have another one. This comes from Brian with a Y. He's a Simple Hockey Fan on Blue Sky. And then it's basically, he says, do nothing in response to the question of what's your plan to fix this mess. He says, the idea, do nothing. Say you're doing nothing and do absolutely nothing. And basically this, and it's a picture of two children, presumably kids who are acting up, and they're in one giant shirt that's holding them together, and it says, our Get Along shirt. Which I think is actually pretty cool.
That's a great shirt. That's a
It
great
is.
shirt. I like that.
That's a good shirt. So, all right, let's see. So we have some on Dave's.
I will respond. Yeah. Well, you pull
So-
that up, Jay.
Okay.
I'll respond to the statement. Just that I think there is some the blessing in disguise of understanding, like, all right, and there's no excuse not to move on from guys like Lindgren. You've ripped band-aids off in rather painful ways with Trouba and Goodrow. The idea of weeding out the guys like who are probably not built to go on a championship run, like, yes, I do think that Drury needs to manage it much better. I think that there's, and this is something that Mike Rupp kind of alluded to. He made a video on Twitter. He also went on the Morning Cup of Hockey podcast with Johnny Lazarus, which I saw like a couple of clips of. Just be a little bit more respectful. Like, players know this stuff happens. I think the issue seems to be that he wasn't talking to them directly, that there was very little communication. This seems to be a theme with the Rangers, right? Same thing with Kakko about, communication from Laviolette about the healthy scratch. Like, guys, like, I know it's the hardest part of the job, right? Like, delivering bad news, it definitely sucks, but do it. You get paid a lot of money. Sit down with your athletes and explain what's going on. And I think they'll probably be able to do this in a lot more of an effective and less dramatic way. So that's all I want to say. I don't necessarily.
That is a very good point. No, that is an
Yes.
extremely good point that is being overlooked. And it's something that I think we spoke about in a group chat, either, since Blue Sky still doesn't have group chats, we still have that on Twitter. I don't know if there was the text message, whatever. Drury is awful at managing people.
Yes,
I'm not talking players or rosters, people. And I'm throwing something out there to the Rangers. My actual job is managing people. It has been for the last 15 years. Managing personalities, reading what they're saying, what they're not saying, understanding what drives people and how to massage certain conversations based off who I'm talking to. That is my job. Hire me for $250K a year. That's probably a tenth of what you guys are getting paid. Not a tenth. That's probably like a quarter of what you guys are getting paid. It's chump change to you, Mr. Dolan. $250K is like what you go out with in your wallet every day. All right. And just let me go talk to the guys and say, hey, guys, listen. The memo was a dumb fucking idea. I think we all realize that. But the reason why Trouba and Kreider were on it was because they were the two that could handle something like this. We know that they're the ones that have the voices in the room, and we know that they're the ones that you guys turn to when shit hits the fan. Now, that's why they were mentioned. How you guys want to respond is up to you, but that's the only reason why. Trouba, we know, is going to be gone. Like, we all know this. Kreider, you're not going anywhere. Let's just take this as it is on the surface and just say, hey, it's a motivator. It's a crappy one, but it's a motivator. All right?
Yeah.
And then just hire me to communicate to these guys. This is what I do.
Yeah, no,
I know you're not going to, so
it's a communication issue, and again, and I think this is where if Drury has lost the respect of the locker room, and I don't know if that's actually happened. Players, I think, don't often think too much about management unless they have to. Drury is also a former player. That often leads to more respect. He's not that far removed from his playing career. It was a different era, but the highlights are still in color. So like, but it is like it's a communication thing, and it's just like you sit down with Truba and you say like, listen, man, this has to happen. I'm sorry, we need the salary cap space. You're not playing up to that level. I can show you all the stats that say you're not. You know, the playoffs were a disaster. I'm not going to go and I'm not going to embarrass you, but like we can roll the clip of you launching yourself into the boards in the middle of a fucking overtime game, right? We can roll the clip of you launching yourself out to the fucking blue line and giving up a goal to Sam Bennett in a huge conference final. Like, you cost us games, dude. You cost us games. And that's why we need to make a move. And you can reconcile with that on your own as a professional and how you move on from this, but we are moving on from you. And that's what you do. Like, you point to the evidence and you say, I have a job to do, as opposed to like, you know, make it public, which is clearly what they did.
So I don't know why this just came to my head. Do you guys know the Instagram reel or TikTok or whatever it is of some high school kid just jumping and smacking his head on the steel frame of a door and it making a loud ping, and then
I'm
somebody
sure I've
just
it.
mixed it into another one bites the dust?
Yes, I've seen it. That's hilarious.
Use that, but with Truba flying into the boards.
Yeah.
So I just had this in my head, and I had to.
It would be great
That's
content.
that's why I made myself laugh with this. Thanks, guys.
Any more questions there, JL?
Well, it's more statements than anything. Greg, aka Taco, says, I have a comment, and it's a GIF of Dennis Reynolds from It's
GIF.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
GIF.
Sorry. I know it's GIF. I know it's GIF, David. I know. A GIF saying, I am untethered and my rage knows no bounds. That was a very funny episode, by the way. Brian with a Y comments a GIF from Shorzy with one of the ladies saying, I hate losing so much. Then he asks, but seriously, the former Bird apps said they think Sean Avery will be the next GM. And then he jokingly asks, how much would you pay to watch that 24/7 on HBO/Max? That's, you know.
I'd actually pay a good amount of money to see Sean Avery as the GM.
I would too.
100%, yeah.
Well, people forget Avery was briefly featured on the Road to the Winter Classic. They waived him before the season started,
Yes.
which I think was
They waived him. They waived him. Yeah, I guess. Well, I think they waived him like no, because he's in the game like with the whole Artem Anisimov like using his stick as a rifle.
It was early season. It was like late October, early November where they did it. I remember.
Yeah, they waived him. He got waived like while they were filming in the lead up to that game. But yeah, I mean, he's the first one in the locker room because Anisimov obviously got kicked out of the game and is already in the locker room, and he like comes in and just cracks up. I mean, it was great. It's great. It's a great moment. Like it's great TV. And those first few seasons of Road to the Winter Classic were so good. It got so watered down, you know, when the NHL started producing it and it was on other places that you couldn't watch. But those first few seasons, even the ones that didn't involve the Rangers, were fantastic.
Yeah, I always enjoyed that content. But I just want to say this because this has been kind of in my head and it relates to a lot of the stuff that we talked about. There's a lot that's going on, and I know Dave alluded to some things about communication not being not being so great, but you also have to wonder at what point. I mean, if you really want to think of it too, it's like you can either be really extreme like Drury has in terms of communication, where you're like kind of not doing anything, or you can be like Gordon and Davidson, where they were kind of coddling a little too much, which is. For me, and this maybe you guys have a different perspective on this. I think it takes a lot for James Dolan to do something like that with the Rangers. Okay, I know he's done some questionable things in the past, but there seems to be this general ambivalence with him about hockey, outside of him just putting the money to the checks. I know he pays attention and he lurks, but maybe there was a coup that was going on. I don't know, but. And I'm not trying to completely dunk on Gordon and Davidson because they did bring a lot of good and some stability to this franchise. But, you know, maybe they were coddling them too much. Clearly, you could see it with just the roster they built and with the players' attitude towards things at the time. And just also even with David Quinn, there was this sort of like, we don't want to touch it when clearly Quinn was becoming an issue that should have been dealt with early on in that season. You know, you had a ripe opportunity at the time to fire Quinn and elevate Knobloch, which the team actually showed up for. So You can either go that direction or just have this tire fire that
Wow.
apparently Drury hasn't been able to communicate well, or from what we've heard, with the players. So whether it's Drury or somebody else, there has to be somebody to help massage that. You're absolutely right, Dave, that there has to be somebody to massage that, because if you're a high level athlete, you have some, it's like similar to politicians except less evil. You you're gonna have an ego. You're playing probably in the highest professional league in the world. Of course you're gonna have an ego. There's millions of dollars involved. So yeah, obviously there needs to be a little bit of coddling. On that same aspect though, these guys are professional athletes where they need to drown the sound out. Okay? Granted, yes, having a bad boss can be a bit of an annoyance. All of us have probably experienced that in some form or another. But at the same time, though, you still have to come to work and show up. Okay, you still have to, for the 9 to 5ers like us here. We're not gonna just stop working because our boss is, unless they're committing some sort of heinous crime against us. We're not gonna stop working because we have families to support, we have bills to pay, right? So if it had been where they were playing, if they were playing well and Drury was on this vengeance against players, I would say, hey, that's messed up, dude. But Drury has shown that there has been some sort of leeway with letting these guys figure it out. It's not like it's not like he hasn't given them the opportunity and they failed. That's on you. And that's the frustrating thing to me as a person who pays money to go see this. Now, if anyone knows me, knows I go to a lot of these games. I love going to hockey games. I love going to sporting events. Everyone knows how much I love doing it. And it pains me that I put my hard-earned money into this, and that's the result I get. As much as I want to blast management, and I'm probably circling around with this, I just needed to get this out. As much as I want to blast management with the way they've handled certain things, we can go back and list all the stuff we want to list. But at the end of the day, the guys on the ice have to do it. I was at the Kings game on Saturday, and they had this very inconsistent effort, and they just looked like they were going through. I was with someone who was at their first game, and I felt embarrassed, and I don't own the team.
Yeah.
Come on. Like it's you spend a decent amount of money on this, and then all of a sudden, this is what you get? I'm sorry. I can't continue to blast management when you have these guys complaining and whining on the ice. I would love to get paid all that money to loaf around on the ice, but unlike them, I would actually try. I don't know. It's just this Kakko trade and everything that's gone on has just become like this sort of weird culmination of just kind of pettiness and stupidness. And I
Yeah.
don't feel bad. I don't feel bad for the players. Drury's not perfect, but at the same time, like, come on, what are we doing here? We're getting outplayed by teams like Nashville and Chicago, teams guys who were probably in the AHL, the week prior to the game, and you
Oh
got
yeah,
these
with
million
Nashville's
dollar
yeah. Nashville's
best team in
defense
the
last
league,
night was like there were no NHLers on that blue line other than Brady Shea and
and they
Luke
didn't even
Shen.
score a damn
Yeah,
goal.
no, yeah, it's pathetic.
Come
JL,
on.
wait, I have to go back to something you just said though, and maybe we can close on this.
Yes.
And maybe this is something we need to do like a deeper dive, Dave. I don't know if it's like a written piece, but like especially if we do kind of lose a season here and we have to really, get away from games and talk about bigger picture stuff. Like, what about the alternate universe where Chris Knobloch gets the job after David Quinn? So, and the reason I find that so interesting is, to your point, like JD and Gorton, they rebuilt the team, right? For better or worse, it maybe wasn't the most sustainable rebuild. Yes, they had the luck of the draw with the lottery, but um, and I think they were going in a certain direction with Quinn, A, as a developmental coach, but B, because he was a hard ass. And they were like, all right, these guys probably need a little bit of a hard ass. The players didn't respond to it, right? Huge red flag. And now that's being borne out big time 5 years later, 4 years later. But the alternate universe that I'm interested in is Chris Knobloch gets the job and not Gerard Gallant. Like, look, he has Connor McDavid, but what is his record in Edmonton since he took over? That team was in last place or whatever, second to last when he took over. They shot up the standings. They're 18, 11, and 2 this year. They have, one of the better goal differentials in the conference. They, again, they're going to be in the playoffs. They're considered, the favorite to win the Stanley Cup or get to the finals out of the West. I wonder what if Knobloch was the guy. And you know what? I'm the furthest thing from a told you so type. But when they fired Gallant, the first name I thought of was Knobloch, and he did such a good job in Hartford. The what I had read about him and what I went to watch a couple Hartford games, like all good stuff. And they decided not to do it. And we'll never know, right? We'll never know. And maybe he comes coach the Rangers 10 years from now. Like, players often find their way to the Rangers in their twilight years. Maybe, some coaches do clearly as well with Laviolette and Gallant, stuff like that. But, man, it would have been really interesting because if Knobloch is like a guy, if he is a Cooper Bednar, like if he does get to that level, the Rangers had their chance. He was in their organization. He coached them to a bunch of wins when David Quinn had COVID. And it's a really interesting what if.
There are 3 opportunities the Rangers had with Knobloch. The Vegas game with Quinn when he was about to get fired, and then they beat Vegas, and then all of a sudden he wasn't. Then when they fired Quinn and hired Gallant, and then when they fired Gallant and hired Laviolette, they had 3 chances. Now, I don't know if Knobloch is that missing piece, but we know Gallant didn't work. And we know Laviolette has been up and down, mostly good, but the bad is bad.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know how deep we can get into it because there's so much in Edmonton that just isn't with the Rangers. But I can give it a shot.
Connor McDavid's reason number 1.
Well,
he is,
but winning when McDavid was hurt. So there's something else there.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, look, I think there's Laviolette's the closest thing they've had to a true steady hand, and they have responded well to that. And I think that that's Knobloch's demeanor to me. He's kind of a steady hand, feels like the kind of guy that can hold players accountable, but doesn't overdo it the way Quinn did. I don't know. Look, it's nothing more than a what if, and it's certainly is not part of the immediate potential solutions for this mess here. But all right, guys, we're going to close it out. Any final thoughts before we sign off here? Dave, over to you.
So today sucked. I don't think anybody's looking at this trade as a good trade, but we are still an optimistic site. We are still always going to try to find the silver lining. Who knows? Maybe Borgan is a better fit because he's a better skater than most other defensemen the Rangers have. Maybe Berard moves up in the lineup and is a better fit offensively. And maybe this gives the team the shot in the ass they need. And remember, they're 2 points out of a playoff spot, and Pittsburgh is bad. So
there's a lot of season left. That's why also I can't I mean, even if they are sort of looking with an eye towards 25, 26, there's 51 games left. You do not play out the string with 51 games left. You just don't do it. No self-respecting competitive athlete, even this sad sack bunch of Rangers, is going to punt 51 games.
And with that, you never know. This team is too talented to be this bad. Maybe Kakko was the issue the whole time. Who knows?
They'll be 10-0 after the trade.
Maybe he stopped saying it was a nice city. Maybe he started saying it's a bad city.
That would hurt the locker room.
Yeah. Who knows? I don't know. I'm grasping at straws, but I don't know. You never know what's going to happen in the next 51 games.
JL.
It's pretty much the same what Dave said. It's too early. They're still somewhat early. They're not too far out of a playoff spot. Anything can happen. Crazier things have happened, mind you. There's still a lot of talent on this team. And until even when it's still somewhat mathematically impossible, until it's determined that they are really far out or that they've really decided to make, this season sort of a punt season, you can't tell. You still have to have some optimism. There's a lot of hockey left to play. Things have changed for teams in shorter periods of time. Now, is it going to be a lot of work? Yes, but I do believe this team still has it in them, and that's I don't want to be a Debbie Downer all the time. And like you guys said, this is a positive, silver lining kind of blog. Obviously, we'll point out the crap, as it happens, and we're going to be very fair. But I still think that there is some hope left, and I'm not going to fully jump ship just yet.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think that, hockey's a weird sport where, and, that rock bottom often does not come when you think it's going to come. It's usually like a week or two after. So I think we're just in that right now. Nashville hopefully was rock bottom. If they could just string a couple of wins together, I think this will finally all go away. There will be enough distance from it for the players that it just won't be this kind of ever-present cloud hanging over the room. You get a couple of good vibes going with wins. I think, frankly, like, I'm looking at Artemi Panarin. Like, this could be his opportunity to truly cement himself. I know we've talked about Kreider. He kind of makes sense. He's a legacy Ranger, probably getting his number retired. Hopefully gets his goal scoring pace back up so he can catch Rod Gilbert. I think he'd be kind of a rightful franchise record holder when it comes to goals scored. But like, if Panarin kind of leads them out of the dregs here and into a playoff spot, like, that's another, mark on his, in a column for him that, like, I'd be thinking about raising number 10 to the rafters, depending on how his career ends as a Ranger, because he has been nothing short of phenomenal. And I think he very much could be a heart and soul guy for this team, if they're going to get out of the playoffs. So that's who I'm looking at. Like, I'm like in Artemi come save us mode right now. I think that's what, that's their best chance, at least in my mind, of getting back into this season. So we will see how it all plays out. Want to thank you all for listening. More crazy days, more crazy weeks here with the Rangers and on Live from the Blue Seats. And we'll talk to you next week.